They say you never really know the person you sleep next to. You think you do. You memorize the rhythm of their breathing. You know how they take their coffee. You know which side of the bed they prefer. But those are just habits. They aren't truths. The truth is usually buried. Sometimes deep inside a heart you can't access. And sometimes, it's buried inside a fireproof wall safe hidden behind a row of designer suits. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the flashlight. It was midnight. The kind of midnight that feels heavy, suffocating. Outside, a summer storm was battering our Greenwich estate, drowning out the sound of my own jagged breathing. I wasn't supposed to know the combination. August 12th, 65, his mother's birthday. Not mine. Of course, it wasn't mine. I reached into the dark metal box. My fingers brushed against cold stacks of cash, deed papers, passports. But I wasn't looking for money. I was looking for the truth. And then, my fingers closed around it. A box. Small. Velvet. Navy blue. It wasn't the brand he usually bought me. Richard liked Tiffany's, the blue box that screamed "I have money" to anyone watching. This box was different. This box was intimate. Vintage. I pulled it out, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I flipped the lid. Sound design, a sharp intake of breath. Thunder cracks loudly. Even in the dim light of my flashlight, it blinded me. A diamond. Not modern or flashy, but a massive, old-mine-cut stone set in heavy gold. It was beautiful. It was the kind of ring you'd give to someone you want to build a dynasty with. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Maybe I'm crazy, I thought. Maybe this is for our anniversary. Maybe he's changing. Julianne? The voice came from the doorway. Deep. Calm. Terrifying. I spun around. Richard was standing there, leaning against the doorframe of the walk-in closet. He was still in his suit pants and dress shirt, the top button undone. He didn't look angry. He looked amused. "What are you doing, Jules?" he asked, stepping into the closet. The space suddenly felt tiny. "I found this," I whispered, holding up the box. "In the safe." He didn't flinch. He didn't panic. He just let out a short, incredulous laugh. He walked over to me and gently took the box from my trembling hand. He looked at it like it was a piece of trash he'd forgotten to throw away. "Oh, that?" he said, a smile playing on his lips. "Jules, calm down. You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't buy that. I blinked, confused. "What? This wedding ring?" "I found it," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Literally. On the sidewalk outside the firm last week. Some poor guy must have dropped it. I tossed it in the safe meaning to take it to the police station when I had time. I forgot all about it." He looked me dead in the eye. It was a perfect performance. The concerned husband soothing his hysterical wife. For a second, just a fraction of a second, I almost believed him. I wanted to believe him. But then the lightning flashed outside, illuminating the gold band in his hand. "You found it?" I asked, my voice hardening. "Yes. Found it," he said, reaching out to touch my cheek. "You need to stop with this paranoia, honey. It's not healthy." "If you found it," I said, stepping back from his touch, "then why is the engraving so fresh?" Richard's smile faltered. "What engraving?" I snatched the box back before he could react. I tilted it toward the flashlight beam. The golden side was pristine, unmarred by time. And there, carved in elegant, looping cursive, was the sentence that ended my life. I read it out loud. To Elena. My soulmate. 2024. The silence that followed was louder than the thunder. Richard's face changed. The charm evaporated. The amusement vanished. In its place was something cold. Something predatory. Give me the ring, Julianne, he said. His voice dropped an octave. You lied, I whispered. I said, give me the damn ring. He lunged at me. 3 months earlier, I didn't know about the ring. I didn't know about Elena. I only knew that my life looked perfect from the outside. And in Greenwich, the outside is all that matters. It was a Sunday. I was hosting the Junior League brunch. Our dining room was flooded with morning light, bouncing off the crystal flutes and the silver platters of imported fruit. I looked around the table at the women, all lawyers turned wives, all mothers turned managers of domestic empires. They were discussing summer homes in the Hamptons and the waitlist for private preschools. Julianne, the quiche is divine, Veronica, my mother-in-law, said from the head of the table. It wasn't a compliment. It was a test. Though, did you use the Gruyere I sent over? It tastes a bit domestic. I used exactly what you sent, Veronica, I said, forcing a smile that made my cheeks ache. I felt like an imposter in my own home. I wasn't born into this. I was a graphic designer from New Jersey before I met Richard. I had a career. I had my own apartment. I had a life that was messy and loud and mine. Now? I was just the curator of Richard's existence. I smoothed the napkin over my lap, feeling the texture of the expensive linen. It felt like a costume. The front door opened, and the energy in the room shifted. Richard walked in. He was 42, but he had the energy of a man 10 years younger. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that salt and pepper hair that made him look distinguished rather than old. He was wearing his tennis whites, a towel draped casually over one shoulder. He looked like an ad for the American dream. Ladies, he boomed, flashing that 100-watt smile. Don't you all look lovely? I hope my wife isn't boring you with stories about my snoring. The women giggled. Actually giggled. Richard walked over to me. He placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing just a little too hard, and kissed the top of my head. And you, he whispered against my hair, loud enough for everyone to hear. You look beautiful, Jules. He pulled a single wildflower from behind his back, a weed, really, that he must have plucked from the garden on his way in. He tucked it behind my ear. Found this. Reminded me of you. Wild and sweet. The table sighed with envy. Oh, look at Richard. He's so romantic. He's so attentive. But they didn't see his eyes. When he pulled away, his eyes didn't meet mine. They scanned the room, checking the reactions of the other women. He wasn't kissing me. He was performing a scene. And I was just a prop. Later that afternoon, after the guests had left and the housekeeper was clearing the debris of the perfect brunch, I called my mom. I was sitting in the sunroom, staring out at the manicured lawn that looked like a golf course. He's doing it again, Mom, I said, curling my legs up onto the chaise lounge. Doing what, honey? Drifting. He's physically here, but he's not. He's always on his phone. He's always working on this skyline project. And when I try to talk to him about anything real, he just glosses over it with a compliment or a gift. Oh, Julianne, my mom sighed. Men get busy. Richard provides a wonderful life for you. You don't have to worry about bills. You don't have to worry about the future. Maybe you're just bored? Have you thought about taking up painting again? It's not boredom, Mom. It's instinct. Don't go looking for trouble where there isn't any, she warned. You have a good man. Don't push him away with your insecurities. I hung up, feeling lonelier than before. My insecurities. That's what Richard called them too. You're too sensitive, Jules. You're imagining things, Jules. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was the problem. 2 weeks later, Richard invited his business partner to dinner. Her name is Elena, he told me while fixing his cufflinks in the mirror. She's brilliant. Top of her class at Yale. We're co-leading the Skyline pitch. I want you to make her feel welcome. Of course, I said, putting on my pearl earrings. I'm always welcoming. But when Elena walked through our door, welcome was the last thing I felt. She was stunning. Not in the soft, suburban way of my friends. She was sharp. She wore a tailored black jumpsuit that cost more than my first car. Her hair was a sleek, dark bob, and her lips were painted a deep crimson. Julianne, she said, extending a hand. Her grip was firm. Richard talks about you all the time. Good things, I hope, I joked weakly. She didn't smile. He says you're very supportive. We sat down to dinner. For the first 20 minutes, I tried. I asked about her background. I asked about the architecture firm. But every time I spoke, the conversation seemed to stall. Then, Richard brought up the Skyline project. The structural integrity of the cantilever is the issue, Richard said, leaning forward, his eyes bright. If we use the steel reinforcements. No, Elena cut in, shaking her head. It ruins the aesthetic flow, Richard. We need to use tension cables. Like we discussed in the loft yesterday. The loft? I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Richard had an office downtown. He didn't have a loft. They launched into a rapid-fire debate about load-bearing walls and city zoning laws. They spoke in a shorthand, a language of acronyms and inside jokes that I couldn't decipher. It was like watching a tennis match where I wasn't even allowed in the stadium. At one point, Richard got animated and knocked his wine glass slightly. A drop of red spilled onto his cuff. Before I could even reach for a napkin, Elena was there. She reached across the table, grabbed his wrist, and dabbed the wine away with her own napkin. It was instinctive. Fast. Intimate. You're so clumsy when you get excited, she murmured, her eyes locked on his. Richard didn't pull away. He looked at her, and for a fleeting second, his face softened in a way I hadn't seen in years. Then he remembered I was there. He cleared his throat and pulled his hand back. Right. Well. Julianne, how is the pot roast? He asked, turning to me. The transition was so clumsy it was insulting. That night, the house felt colder than usual. I lay in bed, watching Richard strip off his shirt. His back was muscled, tense. I wanted to reach out and touch him. I wanted to bridge the gap that had opened up at dinner. Rich? I whispered. He didn't turn around. Is everything okay? With us? He sighed, a heavy, dramatic exhale. Jules, please. I'm exhausted. Elena and I have a deadline next week. My brain is fried. I just felt like, tonight, at dinner, you two seemed very close. He whipped around, his eyes flashing. Here we go. The insecurity again. She's my business partner, Julianne. We spend 12 hours a day together trying to build something that pays for this house. Pays for your clothes. Can't I have a female colleague without you getting jealous? I didn't say I was jealous. I said. I can't do this tonight, he snapped. He climbed into bed and turned his back to me, pulling the duvet up to his shoulder. A wall. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The silence stretched out between us. Minutes passed. I thought he was asleep. But then, I saw it. A soft, blue glow emanating from under his pillow. He was awake. He was texting. And he was hiding it. I closed my eyes and forced myself to breathe. Don't look, I told myself. If you look, you make it real. But the seed was planted. And in 3 months, it would grow into the vine that strangled my marriage. They say denial is a river in Egypt. But for a wife in Greenwich, denial isn't a river. It's a survival mechanism. It's the wall you build brick by brick to keep the cold wind of reality from blowing down your house. I wanted to believe Richard. I wanted to believe that the late nights were just work. That the loft was just a slip of the tongue. That the blue light under the pillow was just an urgent email from a contractor. but the thing about walls? Eventually, cracks form. And once they start, you can't patch them fast enough. It started with something mundane. A Tuesday morning. Richard was at the firm, and I was doing what I did best, managing the logistics of our life. I was in the home office, paying the monthly bills. The stack was usually predictable: the landscaping, the pool maintenance, the membership dues for the country club. I opened the statement for the American Express Black Card. It was the joint account, the one we used for household expenses and travel. I scanned the list, my eyes glazing over the numbers. Whole Foods, Shell Station, Delta Airlines. Then I stopped. Halfway down page 3, there was a charge that didn't fit the pattern. Orem Vintage Jewelers, Soho, New York. $12,450. My finger hovered over the line item. $12,000. My stomach did a slow, sick somersault. I racked my brain. Had I bought something? No. Had Richard mentioned an investment? Sometimes he bought watches, but he usually bragged about those for weeks before pulling the trigger. I grabbed my phone to call him, but then I hesitated. Our 5th anniversary was in 2 weeks. Maybe. A small, desperate hope bloomed in my chest. Maybe it's a surprise. I remembered the way he had looked at me at brunch 3 months ago. The wildflower. Maybe he was trying. Maybe he felt the distance too, and this was his grand gesture to fix it. A vintage piece. Something unique. Something just for me. I put the phone down. I didn't call. I circled the charge in red pen and wrote anniversary next to it with a little question mark. I closed the folder. I chose the comfortable lie. The next few days were a blur of nervous excitement. I started analyzing everything Richard did through the lens of this secret gift. When he came home late on Thursday, smelling of expensive scotch and fatigue, I didn't nag him. I kissed his cheek and heated up his dinner. "You look tired, babe," I said softly, setting the plate down. "Brutal day," he grunted, loosening his tie. "Elena is a perfectionist. She made us redo the entire render for the atrium." The name Elena usually made my skin prickle, but tonight, I felt generous. "Well, the hard work will pay off," I said, smiling at him. "I know you've been planning things." He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. He looked at me sharply. "What do you mean?" "Just, the future. The firm. Everything." I winked. He relaxed, letting out a short laugh. "Yeah. The future. Right." He went back to eating. I watched him, thinking about a diamond necklace or maybe sapphire earrings, hidden somewhere in his briefcase. I felt lighter than I had in months. God, I was naive. That Friday, I had lunch with Veronica. My mother-in-law didn't eat lunch, she inspected it. We were at the club, seated on the terrace overlooking the tennis courts. She was picking apart a Cobb salad like she was looking for evidence. "Richard looks thin," she announced, stabbing a cherry tomato. "He's working hard, Veronica. The Skyline project is a beast. He needs support, Julianne. Real, intellectual support. A man like Richard, he thrives on challenge. He needs a partner who can sharpen him, not just keep his house." The insult landed softly, wrapped in concern. I took a sip of my iced tea to hide my grimace. "I support him plenty," I said. Veronica hummed, unconvinced. "I ran into Elena the other day. At the gallery opening. Now, there is a woman who understands Richard's language. Did you know they're spending weekends at that little studio loft in the city? She told me they're basically co-parenting this building." I froze. The ice cubes clinked against my glass. "Weekends?" I asked, my voice tight. "Richard said he was at the site in Brooklyn last Saturday." Veronica's eyes crinkled at the corners. It wasn't a smile. It was the look a cat gives a mouse right before the pounce. "Oh, dear." Maybe I misunderstood, she said, waving her hand dismissively. But Elena is practically his other half these days, isn't she? Lucky she's not the marrying type. She's far too ambitious for domestic life. She took a bite of lettuce, chewing slowly. She knew exactly what she had done. She had just planted a bomb in the center of my table. I couldn't go home. The silence of the empty house would have driven me crazy. I needed to see him. I needed to see his face and know that Veronica was just being her usual toxic self. I drove into the city. I told myself I was bringing him a surprise lunch, his favorite panini from that place on Bleecker Street. The offices of Sterling and Associates were sleek, modern, all glass and steel. The receptionist, a young girl named Chloe who looked terrified of everything, nodded me through. He's in his office, Mrs. Sterling. But the door is closed. I'll just wait, I said. I walked down the hallway. The carpet was plush, absorbing the sound of my heels. As I approached his corner office, I heard his voice. It wasn't his client voice, that booming, confident baritone. It was lower. Hushed. I stopped just outside the frosted glass door. She can't know yet, Richard said. It has to be perfect. Thursday. My heart leaped. Thursday. That was our anniversary. He was planning the surprise. The charge, the secrecy, it was all for me. Relief washed over me like cool water. I almost turned around to leave, to keep the surprise intact. But then he spoke again. I know, baby. I know. But we have to be careful. If she gets suspicious now, the whole timeline falls apart. Just wait until after the gala. Baby? The word hung in the air, suspended in the dust motes. Richard never called me baby. He called me Jules. He called me honey. He called me Julianne when he was mad. I stood there, frozen, the bag of paninis turning greasy in my hand. I miss you too, he whispered. Thursday. I promise. I heard the click of the phone hanging up. I turned around and walked back to the elevator. I didn't cry. I felt like I was floating outside of my body. I dumped the lunch in the trash can by the elevator banks and pressed the button for the lobby. By the time I got back to Greenwich, the numbness had worn off. In its place was a cold, hard knot of suspicion. I walked straight into his home office. I didn't care about privacy anymore. I went to his desk, a massive mahogany fortress. I tried the top drawer. Locked. I knew where he kept the spare key. It was usually taped under the bottom of his ergonomic chair. I felt around. Nothing. I checked the pencil cup. I checked the bookshelf behind the fountainhead. I checked the potted plant. He had moved it. I went back to the drawer and rattled the handle, frustration boiling over. Damn it. I hissed. I grabbed a letter opener from the desktop and tried to jam it into the lock, twisting it violently. It was irrational. It was crazy. I was acting like the hysterical housewife he always accused me of being. But I didn't care. Julianne? I jumped about a foot in the air. Richard was standing in the doorway. He had come home early. His jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up. He looked at the letter opener in my hand, then at the scratched wood around the lock. His expression wasn't guilty. It was disappointed. What are you doing? He asked calmly. I was looking for a stamp, I lied. It was a pathetic lie. He walked over and gently took the letter opener from my hand. He placed it back on the desk. With a knife? I heard you, I blurted out. On the phone today. I came to bring you lunch. I heard you say baby. I heard you talking about Thursday. Richard stared at me for a long moment. Then, he sighed and rubbed his temples. Jules. You were eavesdropping? Who is she, Richard? She? He laughed, shaking his head. I was talking to the contractor, Julianne. Big Tony. He calls everyone baby. It's a joke. We were talking about the permit approval for Thursday. If we don't get it, the project stalls. Big Tony? I repeated, feeling foolish. Yes. And the timeline I mentioned? That's the construction schedule. If the permit is late, we miss the gala opening. He looked at me with pity. Is this what you do all day? Spin these wild fantasies in your head? It's suffocating, Julianne. I'm out there busting my ass to keep this roof over our heads, and I come home to my wife trying to break into my desk because she thinks I'm having an affair with a contractor named Tony? He made it sound so ridiculous. So plausible. I saw a charge, I whispered, my defense crumbling. $12,000. At a jeweler. Richard paused. His eyes flickered. Just for a second. Then, his face softened. He stepped closer and wrapped his arms around me. I stiffened, but he pulled me in. Oh, Jules, he murmured into my hair. You ruin everything, you know that? That was supposed to be a surprise. It was? Yes. For our anniversary. I wanted to get you something special because I know I've been distant. And now, well, now the surprise is spoiled. I felt tears prick my eyes. I'm sorry, I sobbed into his chest. I'm so sorry, Richard. I'm going crazy. Shoo, he soothed, stroking my back. It's okay. You just need to relax. Trust me, okay? Just trust me. I nodded against his shirt, smelling his cologne. I wanted to trust him. I needed to trust him. But as he held me, I looked over his shoulder at the locked drawer. The scratch mark I had made was still there. A jagged, ugly scar on the perfect mahogany. And deep down, I knew. The scar wasn't just on the desk. It was on us. And no amount of polish was going to fix it. Hope is a dangerous drug. It makes you blind. It makes you stupid. After the incident with the locked drawer, I spent 2 weeks overdosing on hope. I convinced myself the $12,000 charge was for me. I convinced myself the late nights were just a final push for the project. I convinced myself that my marriage was a fortress, not a facade. Then came our anniversary. And the fortress didn't just crack. It dissolved. The morning of our 5th anniversary, the sun was shining. It felt like a sign. I woke up to the smell of espresso and the feeling of Richard's hand on my waist. He was already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed, holding a box. My heart did a traitorous little flip. The ring, I thought. The vintage ring from the statement. Happy anniversary, Jules, he said, his voice thick with what sounded like affection. I sat up, pushing my hair back. Rich, you didn't have to. Of course I did. 5 years. Wood is traditional, but I thought leather was better. He handed me the box. It was orange. Hermes. My stomach dropped. The box was too big. Way too big for a ring. I forced a smile and untied the ribbon. I lifted the lid. Inside was a handbag. A Birkin. The kind of bag women in my circle would kill for. The kind of bag you wait 2 years on a list to get. It's beautiful, I stammered, running my hand over the textured leather. I called in a lot of favors for that color, Richard said, looking proud of himself. Do you love it? I love it, I lied. But my mind was racing. Where was the jewelry? The $12,000 charge at Orm Vintage was for jewelry, not a bag. You can't buy a Birkin at an antique jeweler in Soho. Is something wrong? Richard asked, his brow furrowing. You look disappointed. I looked at him, really looked at him. He seemed so genuine. So confused. No, I said quickly. I'm just overwhelmed. It's too much, Richard. Nothing is too much for you, he said, leaning in to kiss me. As his lips touched mine, I did the math in my head. Maybe he bought the ring and the bag? Maybe the ring was for tonight? Or maybe the charge on the statement was an error after all? I pushed the doubt down. I grabbed the bag and held it like a shield. "Thank you," I whispered. "It's perfect." That night, he took me to Le Jardin. It was our place, the spot where he proposed. The restaurant was dimly lit, smelling of truffle oil and expensive perfume. We had the corner table. Richard ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than my first car. He was being the Richard the First fell in love with. He held my hand across the white tablecloth. He made me laugh with stories about the incompetence of the junior architects. He didn't check his phone once. Not once. By the time dessert arrived, the wine had gone to my head, and the tightness in my chest had loosened. "I know I've been absent," Richard said, swirling his glass. The candlelight caught the silver in his hair. "This project, it's taken everything out of me. But it's almost done. The gala is in 2 weeks. After that, I'm taking a month off. Just us. We'll go to Como. Or Fiji. Wherever you want." I felt tears prick my eyes. This was it. The reassurance I had been starving for. "I've missed you," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I felt like I was losing you." "You could never lose me, Jules," he said, squeezing my hand. His eyes were intense. "You're my anchor. You keep me sane." I squeezed back. I felt guilty for snooping. Guilty for the suspicion. Guilty for the scene in his office. He was here. He was trying. "I love you, Richard," I said. "I love you too, baby. Baby." The word snagged in my brain. He used to never say it. Then I heard him say it on the phone to Big Tony. Now he was saying it to me. "It's just a word," I told myself. "Don't ruin this." "I'll be right back," I said, standing up. "I need to powder my nose." He smiled and let go of my hand. "Hurry back. I'll order the soufflé." I walked to the restroom floating on a cloud of relief. I was wrong. I was paranoid. My life was still intact. The restroom was an oasis of marble and gold leaf. I stood in front of the mirror, reapplying my lipstick. I looked good. Happy. My phone buzzed on the marble counter. I glanced down. It wasn't a text. It was a notification from the Cloud family share. One new photo added by Richard. I frowned. Richard was terrible with technology. He always claimed he didn't know how to work the cloud. He must have taken a photo at the table, maybe of the wine label, or of me, and it auto-synced because he forgot to turn off the setting on his new phone. I unlocked my screen. I tapped the notification. The image loaded. It wasn't a photo of wine. It wasn't a photo of me. It was a close-up of a hand. A woman's hand. Slender fingers, manicured with dark red polish. Resting on a black silk lapel. And on the ring finger was the ring. The vintage diamond. The old mine cut. The heavy gold band. It was undeniable. It caught the light, blazing like a star. But it wasn't the ring that made the room spin. It was the finger. Just below the knuckle of the index finger, there was a tiny, delicate tattoo. A black ink sparrow in flight. I knew that hand. I had seen that hand fix my husband's tie at my own dinner table. I had seen that hand wipe wine off his cuff. Elena. The air left my lungs. The world tilted. This photo wasn't taken tonight. The timestamp was from 3 days ago. Thursday. The day he was at the site. The day he bought the ring. He hadn't bought it for our anniversary. He hadn't bought it as an investment. He had bought an engagement ring for his mistress. And he was stupid enough, arrogant enough, to let his phone sync the trophy shot to our shared account. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. The beautiful, heavy gold ring. The ring that cost $12,000. The ring that was on another woman's hand while I was sitting 20 feet away holding a handbag I didn't want. My stomach lurched violently. I barely made it to the stall before I threw up the expensive wine and the lies I had swallowed with it. When I came out, I rinsed my mouth. I looked in the mirror. The happy woman from 5 minutes ago was gone. Her eyes were dead. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. A cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. He wasn't just cheating. He was replacing me. I gripped the edge of the sink. He thinks I'm stupid, I thought. He thinks he can buy me off with a Birkin while he builds a life with her. I wiped my mouth. I put on a fresh coat of lipstick. Red. Like hers. I walked back out to the table. Richard looked up, smiling. Everything okay? You were gone a while. I sat down. I picked up my wine glass. My hand didn't shake. I'm fine, I said. Just admiring the view. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the last time as his wife. And I started to plan. There is a specific kind of silence that comes before an explosion. It's not peaceful. It's heavy. It's the sound of a fuse burning down. For 2 weeks after the anniversary dinner, I lived in that silence. I played the part. I wore the Birkin bag. I smiled when Richard talked about our trip to Como. I let him touch me, even when my skin crawled. I was waiting for the gala. The completion of the Skyline project. The night Richard would be at his highest point. Because if you're going to destroy a man like Richard, you don't do it when he's down. You do it when he thinks he's untouchable. The night of the gala arrived. Our estate had been transformed. A marquee tent on the lawn, a string quartet playing Vivaldi, 300 of New York's elite sipping champagne in my garden. I was upstairs in the master bedroom, putting on my earrings. They were paste. I had sold the real diamonds 3 days ago to pay the retainer for a forensic accountant. Richard walked in. He looked like a king in his tuxedo. You look stunning, Jules, he said, adjusting his bow tie in the mirror. Tonight is going to be big. The press is here. The mayor is here. It's your big night, Richard, I said, meeting his eyes in the reflection. I wouldn't miss it. Have you seen the safe key? He asked suddenly, patting his pockets. I thought I left it on the dresser. I need to get the cash for the valets. I haven't seen it, I lied. It was in my bra. Damn it. Must have left it in the study. He checked his watch. I have to go down and greet the board. Come down in 5? In 5, I promised. He kissed my cheek, a dry, distracted peck, and left. As soon as the door clicked shut, I moved. I didn't go to the study. I went to the closet. I knew he had put the ring back in the safe. I had watched him do it on the hidden nanny cam I'd installed last week. He liked to take it out and look at it when he thought I was asleep. Like Gollum with his precious. I walked into the closet. I pulled the key from my dress. It was time to loop back to where we started. Scene 19, the confrontation, the loop closing. We are back in the storm from the beginning. The thunder outside matched the drumbeat in my chest. I opened the safe. I found the blue velvet box. Julianne? Richard stood in the doorway. He had come back up. Maybe he sensed it. Maybe predators just know when their prey is off script. What are you doing? I turned around, the box in my hand. The moment stretched, elastic and tense. I found this, I said. He laughed that nervous laugh. This wedding ring? I found it. On the sidewalk. We played out the scene. The lie. The inscription. To Elena. My soulmate. 2024. But this time, we didn't fade to black. This time, we kept going. You lied, I whispered. I said, give me the damn ring. He took a step toward me, his hands balled into fists. But I didn't flinch. I laughed. A cold, sharp sound that stopped him in his tracks. You think I'm going to give this to you? I asked. After you bought it with our money? After you put her name inside it? Richard's face twisted. The mask fell off completely. He didn't look handsome anymore. He looked ugly. It's not your money, Julianne, he spat. It's my money. I earned it. I built this life. You just live in it. Is that what you think? I think you're a boring, needy housewife who stopped being interesting 5 years ago, he sneered. Elena challenges me. She understands the pressure I'm under. You? You just worry about napkins and handbags. He took a breath, straightening his jacket. I was going to wait, he said, his voice dropping to a cruel, matter-of-fact tone. I was going to ask for a divorce after the holidays. Let you down easy. But if you want to do this now, fine. We're done. Give me the ring, pack a bag, and get out of my house. He held out his hand. Expectant. Arrogant. I looked at the ring. Then I looked at him. You want the ring? I asked softly. Yes. Okay, I said. Come and get it. I brushed past him, clutching the box tight. I walked out of the closet, out of the bedroom, and toward the stairs. Julianne, he hissed, chasing after me. Don't you dare make a scene. The mayor is downstairs. I know, I said. I descended the grand staircase. The party was in full swing. The hum of conversation, the clink of glasses. I saw Elena immediately. She was standing near the champagne tower, wearing a silver dress that looked like liquid mercury. She was holding court, laughing at something a donor said. She looked victorious. Richard was right behind me, trying to grab my arm, whispering furious threats in my ear. If you say one word, I will ruin you. You'll get nothing. I'll bury you in legal fees. I shook him off and walked straight to the microphone stand where the string quartet was playing. The music stopped screeching to a halt as I tapped the mic. Thump. 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 The room went silent. 300 faces turned toward me. Good evening, everyone, I said. My voice was steady. I'm so glad you could all be here to celebrate the completion of the Skyline project. My husband, Richard, has worked very hard. Richard froze at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes wide with panic. He couldn't rush the stage without looking crazy. He had to wait. Richard is a man of detail, I continued, scanning the crowd until I locked eyes with Elena. She looked confused. He believes in perfection. In finding the exact right fit. I held up the blue velvet box. He actually found something very special recently. He told me he found it on the sidewalk. Can you believe that? A few polite chuckles from the crowd. But Richard is too modest, I said. He didn't find it. He made it. For the person who really matters to him. I opened the box. The diamond flashed under the chandelier lights. Elena? I called out. Elena flinched. The crowd parted, creating a path between us. Richard wanted you to have this tonight, I said, my voice projecting clear and sweet. It has your name inside. To Elena. My soulmate. Gasps rippled through the room. The mayor's wife covered her mouth. Elena turned pale, looking for an exit. Richard looked like he was having a stroke. I think he was too shy to give it to you himself, I said. Since I was still, in the way. I didn't hand it to her. I didn't throw it at her. I turned to the champagne tower, a pyramid of delicate crystal glasses filled with expensive bubbles. Catch, I whispered. I tossed the ring box. It didn't go to Elena. It sailed through the air and hit the middle of the tower. Crash. The sound was magnificent. Glass shattered. Champagne exploded like a geyser. The tower collapsed in a waterfall of sticky, expensive ruin. Elena shrieked as champagne soaked her silver dress. Richard stood paralyzed, watching his perfect image dissolve in a puddle of booze and broken glass. I placed the microphone back on the stand. "Happy anniversary, Richard," I said into the silence. I walked down the steps, past the stunned guests, past my soaked mother-in-law, and out the front door. I didn't run. I walked. And for the first time in 5 years, I could breathe. They say the truth will set you free, but they forget to mention that first, it will make you homeless. It will freeze your bank accounts. It will make you sleep on a mattress that smells like stale cigarette smoke in a motel off I-95. Walking out of that gala felt like flying. Waking up the next morning felt like crashing. The motel room was small. Beige walls. A flickering neon sign outside buzzing like an angry insect. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. 47 missed calls from Richard. 12 from Veronica. 3 from my mother. I checked my bank app. Access denied. Of course. Richard moved fast. I had $72 in cash and a tank of gas. I had the clothes on my back, a gala gown that was now wrinkled and ridiculous in the morning light. I wanted to cry. I wanted to call him and beg. I wanted to go back to the cage because at least the cage was warm. But then I closed my eyes and saw the champagne tower crashing down. I saw the look on Elena's face. I saw the fear in Richard's eyes. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a problem. And problems don't beg. They solve. I reached into my bag and pulled out the flash drive. The one I had copied from his computer while he was in the shower 2 days before the party. It didn't just have photos of the affair. It had the creative accounting files for the Skyline project. The bribes to city officials. The corners cut on materials. I dialed the number of the forensic accountant I had retained. "Mr. Vance?" I said, my voice raspy but steady. "It's Julianne Sterling. I'm ready to talk." 3 months later. The conference room was cold. Glass walls. Mahogany table. It looked just like Richard's office, but this was neutral ground. Richard sat across from me. He looked older. The salt and pepper hair was mostly salt now. He had dark circles under his eyes. His suit was expensive, but it hung a little loose on his frame. Elena wasn't there. She had been fired from the firm 2 weeks after the scandal broke. The board didn't like messy optics. "This is robbery, Julianne," Richard hissed, sliding the settlement papers across the table. "It's equity, Richard," I said calmly. I wasn't wearing designer clothes anymore. I was wearing a blazer I bought at Zara and jeans. I felt more like myself than I had in years. "I built that firm," he growled. "And you risked it all for a ego trip," my lawyer cut in. "We have the files, Mr. Sterling. The DA would be very interested in the concrete suppliers you used for the foundation." Richard flinched. He looked at me, searching for the weak, insecure woman who used to bake quiches for his mother. "Jules," he said, his voice softening, trying that old charm one last time. "Do you really want to do this? Destroy everything? We had good times. Can't we find a middle ground?" I looked at him. I remembered the blue light under the pillow. The lie about the ring. The way he looked at me like I was furniture. "The middle ground was the life we had, Richard," I said. "You burned it down. I'm just sweeping up the ashes." I picked up the pen. "Sign the papers," I said. "Or I send the email to the DA." He stared at me for a long moment. He saw the steel in my spine. He realized, finally, that the trophy wife was gone. He picked up his pen. His hand shook as he signed away half his liquid assets and the beach house. It's funny what you find when you stop looking for permission to exist. I'm sitting on the deck of the beach house, my beach house. I turned it into a short-term rental property. It's booked solid for the next 6 months. Turns out, I'm pretty good at managing logistics when I'm not managing a man's ego. I have my own business now. Reclaim Design. I help women redesign their spaces after divorces. I help them paint over the beige walls their ex-husbands loved. I help them find their color again. My phone buzzes. It's not a panic attack anymore. It's a text from a client. I take a sip of my coffee and look out at the water. Last week, I heard from a friend in Greenwich. Richard and Elena broke up. Apparently, without the thrill of the secret, they didn't have much to talk about. The firm is struggling. He's living in a condo downtown. I felt nothing. No joy. No anger. Just a quiet, indifferent peace. I look down at my hand. The ring finger is bare. No diamond. No heavy gold band weighing me down. I wiggle my fingers in the sunlight. They feel light. They feel strong. I stand up and walk down the steps to the sand. The wind catches my hair. It's messy. It's wild. This life? I whisper to the ocean. I found it. And this time, it's the truth.